This happened at the house of an acquaintance whom I used to hang out with from time to time. One day, while we were chatting in the dining room after smoking some weed, I began to notice something in the hallway that connected to his and his family's rooms. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a certain shadow of something, or perhaps someone moving from one wall to another, as if it were the specter of some person or a kind of entity. I tried to find a logical explanation for all of this. Maybe it was the marijuana having an effect on me, making me see visions of some interdimensional being or ghost, but I didn't feel that high to experience such things. So, I told myself that maybe it was the mother of his daughter from the past. However, when I stared at the hallway, I saw no one. I repeated this a few times until I decided to ignore it. After a while, the guy I was talking to suddenly changed the topic of conversation and started telling me about strange occurrences in the house. He mentioned a strange presence that really scared him. My skin crawled because it seemed like he was experiencing the same thing I had noticed in the hallway. I confessed about what I had seen. I haven't been back to that house, but I could never get that experience out of my head. Nicholas was someone I met a few years ago, and with the passage of time, he lost everything. He lost his job due to malpractice during an operation related to an issue I can't recall right now, but it was related to his intestinal area and close to his genitals. He became disabled, initiated a lawsuit against the doctor, which lasted for years, and, as far as I know, was never resolved. This led to financial problems, which in turn led to family problems and years of endless suffering. One day, while playing Jenga with his daughter, the police stormed into his house, arresting him due to a false domestic violence report. Without much explanation, they took him to the police station for questioning. He wasn't imprisoned, but he was ordered not to return home and was left with only what he had on him. The person responsible for this report was the mother of his daughter. This story doesn't end here, as he had to go to his mother's house, which he also helped build, but more problems would come over time. With his mother very ill and his sister, brother-in-law, and their children living in the house, tensions escalated after his mother's death. He ended up homeless and had to leave behind his dog and cat, which were his only companions. He spent several nights sleeping in a tent in a park on the outskirts of Pando, Canelones, Uruguay. Weeks later, he got an opportunity to move somewhere else, a very basic house in the countryside, but it was a roof over his head. The good news was that he also got his pets back, and everything seemed like it would improve because he had found a job. However, issues of violence would return to his life. It turned out the people who had arranged the house and job for him were real troublemakers. They didn't want to pay him and wanted to forcibly remove him. After going through another ordeal at the police station due to this problem, he had to leave. He gave his pets up for adoption and ended up in a shelter, returning to Pando. Without a phone, no way to communicate, and in total ruin. I never saw him again. This story is quite lengthy, and there were rumors that the house in the countryside was apparently involved in something related to human trafficking, but I'll leave it here. Fun fact, Nicholas was the acquaintance I mentioned in the previous story. When I was a child, my grandfather used to tell me a story about an old mirror that had been in the family for generations. He said the mirror was a portal to another dimension and that, on occasion, it would reflect images from a different world. The legend went that if someone crossed through the mirror, they would become trapped in that parallel world. Although I always thought it was a made-up story, one day, while I was alone in my grandparents' house, I approached the mirror and saw a strange figure on the other side. Curious, I reached out my hand towards the mirror, and my hand passed through it effortlessly. I found myself in a dark and desolate world, where strange beings roamed a dystopian landscape. Desperate to return home, I spent days searching for the mirror but couldn't find it. Finally, an old man told me that the mirror only appeared to those who had lost something important in their own world and wished to reclaim it. I realized that I had crossed through the mirror unintentionally, and what I had lost was my childhood and the security of my home. With the old man's help, I found the mirror and, with a deep sigh, passed back into my world. Although I had regained my everyday life, the experience left me wondering if the mirror still held secrets about other dimensions waiting to be explored. A few months ago, I began to notice strange things in my house. I realized that someone knew details of my life that no one else should. One day, while searching the attic for a lost item, I found a cable leading to a small hidden camera. My heart raced, and my mind began to spin. I started to look for more and discovered several hidden cameras in my home. They were carefully placed in places like my bedroom, the living room, and even the bathroom. Paranoia consumed me, and I began to suspect a nearby neighbor, as these cameras seemed to be installed with an intimate knowledge of my daily routine. After a thorough investigation, I discovered that my neighbor, whom I had known for years, was responsible. He had been spying on me for months. When I confronted my neighbor, he admitted that he had been recording me for incomprehensible reasons. This revelation shattered our relationship and forever changed my perception of trust in people close to me.